Hey there, fishermen. AquaDuelist here, and 2022, I must say, was a really great year for being a water duelist. We got so many just good water cards, and it's really awesome. I just feel like it was an amazing year for us. So, to kick off 2023, I really wanted to talk about what I felt was just the best, generic water cards of 2022. So I'm not ranking these in any order per se. So yeah, this isn't like a top 10 list or anything like that, but just the cards that I felt were generically just kind of the best and just stand out the most to me. So, as I said, the cards have to be generic in some way. So, yeah, we're not putting things like, the Marincis cards in here because, all the new Marincis cards we got out of, the Duelist of the Deep set were basically not really generic and just kind of supported the Marincis archetype. You guys get the idea of what I'm saying here. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this, guys. So the first card that I want to talk about is actually my favorite one on this list. I love this card so much, and I have just seen instant success with it. It's pretty crazy. On the card's Moray of Avarice. If you're not familiar with this card, it was from Power of the Elements. It's an ultra rare. It's a spell where you banish a water monster you control to draw 2 cards. It's overall a actually really solid just draw card for water decks. And I know there's been quite, a bit of debate on it, whether it's really just good or bad. I know it's not like Pod Desires, which is a +1. With this, you actually do have to banish a monster you control to get that draw. So you're basically, using 2 cards there to draw 2, but water monsters actually have a lot of just extenders in general. And in Kraken control, most of the time you're going to be making usually a Kraken with like a Bahamut Shark, which you're going to use to make Toad. And there are quite a bit of times where I do have that, just 5th body in a sense that I can just banish to draw 2 and, essentially get like, a strike, an ash or whatever, and just essentially get another negate, which is pretty freaking nice. This card actually has saved me a few times. One time in particular I do want to bring up. Still my favorite time I've used this card. I was actually in a Flunderies matchup, and it was pretty grindy for a little bit, and my hand was, Silent Angler, and I drew Moray of Avarice, and I basically just normal summoned the Silent Angler, banished it, because, I had nothing else to lose, and happened to actually draw a Strike, and a, White Mirror. So with the White Mirror, I was actually able to summon a copy of Silent Angler from my graveyard that I used earlier in the duel. I was able to grab one from deck and, basically make Bahamut and Toad and, Ash Strike. So that was just 2 negates right there. And that is still just like one of the greatest instances where I feel like this card really has just saved my ass and just really won me the game. So it's just a really good card. If you don't have it, it's really cheap and honestly worth picking up. Now, without a doubt, I do think Abyss Shark is probably just the best generic water extender that Yu-Gi-Oh! Really has just ever gotten. If you're not familiar with it, it's an ultra rare from the Duelist of the Deep set, level 5 water fish, that if all the monsters you control are water, you get to special summon it, and then you can add a level 3, 4, or 5 fish monster from deck to hand. And this card can be treated as a level 3, 4, or 5 for the XC summon of a number monster. But you are locked into water if you, summon this guy and such. So that does kind of suck a bit because there are some really cool number monsters that aren't water. So it's, that's whatever. But the main thing is, though, this is a 1-card Kraken. And Stealth Kraken is actually just an amazing freaking card. I love it. But we're not going to talk about Stealth Kraken. So, yeah, this card is just so good that a engine that Marincis players are playing is basically 3 Abyss Shark and 2 Silent Anglers, which, like I said, 1-card Kraken. And that's a tech that they are playing. It's kind of crazy that, this card is seeing like some niche use in like Marincess, which is mainly a link summon deck. I just think that's kind of crazy. I had to point out, but it does add other stuff besides Silent Angler. There are times where I'm using this in Kraken Control. Obviously, there's a 3 of, so I might actually grab a starter card for next turn. To basically, have like a follow-up where I can make another like 1-card XC and such, depending on how many extenders and such I have in my hand. So that's also something you could think about if you are playing this card. But regardless, this is honestly just one of the best water extenders we've really ever gotten. Without a doubt in my mind, I do think that Cartorum, the hidden gem of the Seafront, is just such an amazing card. And honestly was just really swept under the rug. This card came in Power of the Elements, and it was a common, so it already kind of got the double whammy right there, Power of the Elements was honestly one of the best sets of 2022, I feel. And on top of that, too, it being a common, everyone just kind of, just glanced over it, just looked over it. So that does kind of suck. We don't really see a whole lot of commons really just becoming, meta relevant, I feel. I think one of the best ones was Pankratops, but we're not talking about Pankratops today, guys. So if you're not familiar with Hidden Gem of the Seafront, it's a level 2 water rock monster, so that's already a very interesting mix of attribute and the typing, which I think is pretty cool. And its effect is you can discard it to get the additional normal summon of a water monster or a earth monster, and then if you control both a water monster and an earth monster while this card's in your grave, you get to special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. So right off the bat, this card is basically a double summon, and since it's a rock monster, it's actually searchable with Galleon Granite. So you have a searchable double summon for water decks and earth decks. On top of that, too, this card can actually come back as, like an extender from the grave, which is pretty freaking nice. Although you might be thinking, well, in a water deck, that probably won't come up a whole lot. And, you're probably right. It's honestly not going to come up a whole freaking lot. But the thing is, you have so many water extenders that actually don't, require you to, only have water monsters. They just require a water monster, like Silent Angler and, Silent Sea Nettles. And then, you have, was it Aqua Spirit, which, you can special summon by banishing a water monster from the grave. So, yeah, you actually do have a decent amount of just, water rank 4 monsters that don't lock you into water or just require you to only have water monsters. So, you could make Galleon Granite to search this thing, or, you could play something like Baguska or just another good earth rank 4 in a water deck and actually bring this out from the grave. So that's pretty cool. I think my favorite deck I've actually used this in, though, is actually not a water deck. If you guys remember a few years ago when I did the Quackamiru, just rock stun deck, I actually brought that back to, the locals I have here. I think maybe like a month and a half, 2 months ago, just to throw people off. And I played it in I played this card in that deck, and I really freaking enjoyed it, and it was just a major help. So this card is really freaking good. Out of all the water monsters that got released in 2022, I still really believe that Supreme Sea Mare honestly has the highest potential out of just all the water monsters, because this is one of those cards that I genuinely feel like only just gets better as time goes on and more Aqua monsters get released into the game. If you're not familiar with this card, it was a common from Dimension Force, and its effect is basically you can send a Aqua monster from deck to grave, and then during the end phase you can tribute him, and you can add a Aqua monster from grave to hand. So essentially this card can get you really just any Aqua monster you want. It's, like I said, it does suck that the tribute and add is during the end phase, but you still get to send any Aqua monster you want from deck to grave, which is really freaking nice. There's a really cool combo I like you can do with this where basically, this with like Ice Knight or any water extender gets you, into like the barrier statue. Basically, you just foolish burial the barrier statue off of this guy's effect. And then, you can just go into Coral Anemone with your extender and just bring the barrier statue back. It's a really nice play that I like. You could also do that with, the one turtle. Was it Tetsuo Erat Newman, I believe is the right one. You could do that with that if you wanted to. What does kind of suck, though, is I was really hoping that the OCG trend on this card would follow over to TCG, and sadly it just really didn't. In the OCG, this card was actually very meta relevant for a while, because this would actually kickstart all of, the tier element plays and such. So sadly that didn't really happen here. I understand not every OCG trend is going to happen when it hits the TCG, but this is the only one I feel like really disappointed that it just didn't happen. And I feel this card just kind of really just got glossed over because, it's a common, which happens a lot. But anyways, this card just still, I think, has so much good potential, and it's really just a great penny stock. And since the Megatons aren't really a thing anymore, we really have no idea when this card can get reprinted. The last card that I want to talk about for this video, I feel is under everybody's radar, and that card is World Sea Dragons Atlantis. It was a secret rare, Darkwing Blast, and right now, as recording, this card's actually back up to $8. I remember this card hit a low point of around, $5, I think it was, or like just under $5 or at $5. I can't remember exactly, but, the point is this card was around $5, and it's starting to go back up. So if you're not familiar with it, what it does is it's a Link 4 that requires at least one effect monster, and you banish every monster on the field. You special summon back all the monsters that were banished, and you get to choose, the position and the zones that they go in and such. And then it has another effect for every card that is co-linked on the field. You get to pop a card, So if you had like this co-linked with like Marincess Coral Anemone, you get to pop 2 cards. And it just says for each monster co-linked. So from my understanding, it's not just your monsters, your opponent's monsters as well. On top of that, too, for that little effect, it just says pop, cards. It doesn't specify they have to be monsters, spells or traps. So yeah, you get to pop literally just anything, which is pretty freaking cool. Now, a lot of people kind of consider this to be kind of like, a great value water version of Access Code Talker. And, Access Code Talker got reprinted a little while ago, and, it's just more readily available. So why would you pick this card up and play it over Access Code Talker? Well, here's the thing. I do think there are some decks that, this card is better in than Access Code Talker. And the biggest one being Marincess. And the other thing is basically any deck that plays Marincess, Coral Anemone specifically. Because see, here's the thing. Marincess Coral Anemone is what really just makes this card, just great and absolutely busted. So if you use Marincess Coral Anemone's effect to, revive a water monster from the grave, you are locked into water, sir. Well, here's the thing. If you use that before going into, Atlantis and using the effect, you get to banish just every monster. If your opponent isn't playing water monsters, you cannot special summon those those non-water monsters back. Because the thing is, you are locked into special summoning water monsters. So right there, effectively, you just get to clear out your opponent's board. And the thing is, if you are playing Marincess Coral Anemone, you are not going to be able to make Access Code Talker, because Access Code Talker isn't a water monster. And the thing is, there are actually a lot of just rogue and casual decks that do just play Marincess Coral Anemone, because That card is just insanely fucking good. Like, it is just, it is one of the best water monsters that we, really just ever got, because it's so freaking generic. And, I never thought that that card would, break a card like this in the future. I mean, doesn't exactly break, but you guys get what I mean. It makes Zelantis pretty freaking stupid. And on top of that, too, if you are playing against the back row deck, you get to pop cards right there with the second effect. So basically, if you're playing this card, this card in general, you do have some back row removal, which I think is pretty freaking nice. And a lot of people aren't gonna, I feel like, really realize and think about that. So that's something a little nice to remember right there, guys. While I was working on a list for this video, there were a decent amount of other cards I really wanted to mention and bring up, but I feel like this video is getting kind of long. So I do have enough for a part 2. So guys, if this video gets 10 likes within a week after it is up, I will make a part 2 to this video. So fishermen, go ahead and harpoon that subscribe button. Harpoon that like button, really helps out the channel. Remember, 10 likes within a week of this video getting up, and we will do a part 2. Link in the description down below to Instagram if you want to follow me on there. I post some cool stuff on there. And I will see y'all in the next video.